The Relationship Mirror. What Love Reveals About You. By T.M. Light. Description. The Relationship Mirror, What Love Reveals About You, is a powerful and emotionally transformative guide to understanding how relationships reflect your inner world. This inspiring self-help book explores love, emotional healing, self-worth, attachment styles, communication, boundaries, heartbreak, and personal growth. Through deep insights and motivational storytelling, readers will discover how romantic relationships expose hidden wounds, fears, insecurities, and strengths. Perfect for anyone seeking healthier relationships, emotional clarity, and lasting self-love, this book teaches how to break toxic patterns, heal emotionally, and build conscious connections. Learn how love can become a mirror for self-discovery, healing, transformation, and emotional freedom. Chapter Outline. Introduction. Chapter 1, The Mirror Principle. Chapter 2, Attraction and the Wounded Self. Chapter 3, Love and Self-Worth. Chapter 4, Emotional Triggers and Hidden Wounds. Chapter 5, Communication as a Window to the Soul. Chapter 6, Boundaries, Standards and Self-Respect. Chapter 7, Conflict, Control and Emotional Power. Chapter 8, Healing Through Relationships. Chapter 9, Letting Go and Learning the Lesson. Chapter 10, Becoming the Love You Seek. Conclusion. Introduction. Love as a reflection, not a rescue. Love is one of the most powerful experiences a human being can encounter. It has the ability to inspire us, heal us, challenge us, and completely transform the way we see ourselves. Yet for many people, relationships become places of confusion, emotional pain, disappointment, and endless searching. We enter love hoping someone else will complete us, save us, or finally make us feel worthy enough. We look for people to fill emotional emptiness that we have not yet learned how to heal within ourselves. But the truth is, relationships were never designed to rescue us. They were designed to reveal us. Every relationship acts like a mirror. It reflects back the parts of ourselves we often ignore, suppress, or fail to understand. Love has a way of bringing hidden emotions to the surface. It exposes our fears, insecurities, emotional wounds, habits, and even our deepest strengths. The very things we struggle with in relationships are often connected to unresolved parts of ourselves that are asking for attention and healing. This is why relationships trigger such intense emotions. A simple disagreement can awaken feelings of rejection that began years ago. A delayed text message can trigger fears of abandonment. A partner's criticism can reopen old wounds tied to self-worth and inadequacy. Relationships touch places within us that everyday life often cannot reach. They awaken emotional memories, unconscious beliefs, and patterns we may not even realize we carry. Many people believe their greatest relationship problem is finding the wrong partner. However, the deeper issue is often the relationship they have with themselves. We attract, tolerate, and respond to love based on what we believe we deserve. If we secretly feel unworthy, we may accept unhealthy treatment. If we fear abandonment, we may become emotionally dependent. If we fear vulnerability, we may push love away when it gets too close. Love becomes difficult not because we are broken, but because relationships illuminate the areas within us that still need healing and growth. This is the idea behind the relationship mirror. The people we love often reflect the emotional lessons we most need to learn. Sometimes they reveal our patience. Sometimes they expose our jealousy. Sometimes they uncover our need for validation or our fear of being alone. Other times, they awaken our capacity for compassion, resilience, and emotional maturity. Relationships are not random experiences. They are emotional classrooms that teach us about ourselves in ways nothing else can. One of the most important concepts you will learn throughout this book is emotional projection. Emotional projection happens when we place our inner fears, insecurities, or unresolved emotions onto another person. For example, someone who struggles with self-worth may constantly seek reassurance from a partner. Someone who has been betrayed in the past may accuse a loving partner of dishonesty without evidence. Often, we assume our emotional reactions are entirely caused by another person, when in reality, they are deeply connected to wounds we already carry within ourselves. This is not meant to create shame or self-blame. It is meant to create awareness. Self-awareness is one of the most powerful tools for emotional healing and healthy relationships. When you begin to understand your triggers, patterns, and emotional habits, you stop viewing relationships only through the lens of blame. Instead, you begin asking deeper questions. Why does this situation affect me so strongly? What fear is being activated inside me? What belief about myself am I carrying into this relationship? Those questions are life-changing because they shift your focus from control to growth. You cannot control every person who enters your life, but you can understand yourself more deeply. You can heal emotional wounds that have shaped your choices. You can develop healthier communication. You can build stronger boundaries. You can learn to love without losing yourself in the process. This book is not about becoming perfect in love. Perfection does not exist in relationships, because human beings are imperfect by nature. Every person carries emotional baggage, fears, and insecurities. Healthy relationships are not built by flawless people. They are built by self-aware people who are willing to grow. As you journey through these chapters, you will gain emotional clarity about why you think, feel, and respond the way you do in relationships. You will begin recognizing unhealthy patterns that may have repeated throughout your romantic experiences. You will understand how childhood experiences, emotional wounds, and self-worth influence the way you love and connect with others. You will also learn healthier communication habits that create emotional safety instead of emotional chaos. Communication is more than words. It is the ability to express feelings honestly, listen with empathy, and respond with emotional maturity. Many relationships fail not because love is absent, but because understanding is missing. When communication improves, connection deepens. Another powerful transformation this book aims to inspire is the rebuilding of self-worth. Too many people search for love while secretly believing they are not enough. They depend on relationships to feel valuable, attractive, chosen, or complete. But true confidence cannot be built on someone else's approval. Lasting self-worth begins within. When you value yourself, you stop settling for relationships that drain your peace, disrespect your boundaries, or diminish your identity. You will also learn how to develop conscious relationship habits. Many people operate in relationships unconsciously, repeating emotional cycles without questioning them. They react automatically based on fear, pride, insecurity, or past pain. Conscious relationships require intentional behavior, emotional responsibility, and self-reflection. They require choosing growth over ego, and healing over emotional avoidance. Most importantly, this book invites you to stop approaching relationships as a source of validation, and begin seeing them as opportunities for transformation. Love should not be the place where you disappear. It should be the place where you discover yourself more deeply. Healthy love does not demand that you abandon your identity, silence your needs, or sacrifice your peace to be accepted. Instead, it encourages growth, honesty, emotional freedom, and authenticity. The relationship mirror never lies. It reveals what still needs healing, what deserves protection, and what is possible when emotional awareness replaces emotional blindness. Every relationship you experience can either become another painful cycle or an opportunity for deeper self-understanding. The choice begins with your willingness to look inward. As you continue reading, allow yourself to be honest about your experiences, your emotions, and your patterns. Give yourself permission to grow without judgment. Healing is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to the healthiest, strongest, and most authentic version of yourself. Love is not here to rescue you. Love is here to reveal you. Chapter 1. The Mirror Principle: Why Relationships Reflect Who You Are. Relationships are rarely just about the other person. While it may seem like love is centered around finding someone compatible, attractive, understanding, or emotionally available, relationships are actually much deeper than that. Every romantic connection becomes a reflection of your inner world. Every interaction, every emotional reaction, every attachment, and every conflict reveals something about your beliefs, fears, emotional wounds, needs, and identity. This is the Mirror Principle. The Mirror Principle teaches us that relationships do not simply expose who the other person is. They expose who we are. Love has a unique ability to uncover parts of ourselves we may not notice in any other area of life. A person can appear strong, confident, and emotionally secure until they enter a relationship that triggers their fear of rejection. Another person may seem independent until love awakens their fear of abandonment. Relationships have a way of bringing hidden emotions to the surface because emotional intimacy creates vulnerability, and vulnerability reveals truth. This truth is not always comfortable. In fact, many people spend years blaming others for their heartbreaks without realizing they are repeating emotional patterns that originate within themselves. They keep attracting the same kind of partners, facing the same disappointments, and experiencing the same emotional struggles while believing the problem is always external. But growth begins when you stop asking, "Why does this keep happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this experience trying to teach me about myself?" That question changes everything. The emotional mirror inside relationships reflects both your strengths and your wounds. It reflects your capacity to trust, communicate, forgive, receive love, and maintain healthy boundaries. At the same time, it also reveals insecurities, fears, unresolved trauma, emotional dependence, and unhealthy coping habits. Relationships magnify whatever already exists within you. If peace exists within you, relationships often deepen it. If insecurity exists within you, relationships often intensify it. This is why relationships trigger emotions so deeply. Romantic relationships are not surface-level connections. They touch the emotional core of who we are. They activate our desire to feel seen, accepted, valued, and safe. When those needs feel threatened, emotional reactions become powerful. Suddenly, a delayed response feels personal. A disagreement feels like rejection. Emotional distance feels like abandonment. What seems like a small issue on the outside often connects to something much deeper internally. Many emotional reactions in relationships are not about the present moment alone. They are connected to emotional memories and past experiences that remain unresolved. Someone who grew up feeling ignored may become extremely sensitive to feeling emotionally dismissed in adulthood. Someone who experienced betrayal in a previous relationship may struggle to trust even a loyal partner. The relationship mirror reflects these emotional wounds back to us, not to punish us, but to bring awareness to what still needs healing. One of the most difficult truths to accept is that we often attract relationships that feel emotionally familiar, even when they are unhealthy. Human beings are naturally drawn toward emotional experiences that resemble what they already know. Familiarity creates comfort, even when that comfort is painful. This explains why many people repeatedly enter relationships with emotionally unavailable partners, controlling individuals, or people who reinforce feelings of inadequacy. The psychology behind attraction goes far beyond physical appearance or chemistry. Attraction is deeply connected to emotional conditioning. Many people believe they are choosing partners consciously, but much of attraction operates subconsciously. We are often drawn to people who reflect unresolved emotional experiences from childhood or past relationships. Sometimes we seek people who mirror the love we received growing up. Other times, we unconsciously pursue relationships that give us another opportunity to fix old wounds. For example, someone who grew up constantly seeking approval from emotionally distant parents may become attracted to emotionally unavailable partners. Why? Because part of them hopes that finally earning love from a distant person will heal the pain of never fully feeling chosen before. Another person who experienced inconsistency growing up may mistake emotional chaos for passion because instability feels familiar. The mind often confuses familiar emotional intensity with love. This is why chemistry alone is never enough to determine whether a relationship is healthy. Strong attraction does not always mean strong compatibility. Sometimes intense attraction is simply emotional recognition. It is your subconscious recognizing a familiar emotional pattern. That familiarity can feel exciting, magnetic, and irresistible, even when it leads to pain. The mirror principle invites you to become more conscious about your emotional patterns rather than simply reacting to them. Instead of focusing only on what others are doing wrong, it encourages you to examine your own emotional responses. Why do certain behaviors affect you so deeply? Why do you tolerate certain treatment? Why do you fear being alone? Why do you overextend yourself to keep relationships? Why does validation from another person hold so much power over your emotions? These questions are not designed to create shame. They are designed to create awareness. Awareness is the beginning of emotional freedom. You cannot change patterns you refuse to recognize. One of the clearest signs that unresolved emotional patterns exist is repetition. If the same type of relationship keeps appearing in your life, there is likely a lesson that has not yet been fully understood. Different faces may appear, but the emotional dynamic remains the same. Perhaps you repeatedly attract partners who cannot communicate emotionally. Perhaps you constantly feel unappreciated, abandoned, betrayed, or emotionally drained. These recurring experiences are not random. They are reflections of internal patterns, beliefs, and emotional conditioning that continue operating beneath the surface. This does not mean you are responsible for other people's harmful behavior. People are accountable for their own actions. However, self-awareness requires honesty about why certain patterns continue repeating. Sometimes the repetition exists because of unresolved wounds. Sometimes it exists because of weak boundaries. Sometimes it exists because fear of loneliness causes people to ignore red flags. Sometimes it exists because deep down a person believes unhealthy love is the best they can receive. The relationship mirror forces us to confront these uncomfortable truths, but it also offers incredible opportunities for transformation. Once you become aware of your patterns, you can begin changing them. Healing begins when you stop seeking relationships that only feel familiar and start choosing relationships that feel healthy. Healthy love may initially feel unfamiliar to someone accustomed to emotional chaos. Stability can feel boring to a person conditioned to inconsistency. Emotional safety may feel uncomfortable to someone used to fighting for affection. This is because healing often requires relearning what love truly looks like. Love is not supposed to constantly make you anxious, confused, or emotionally exhausted. Healthy love does not require you to abandon yourself to maintain connection. It does not thrive on manipulation, fear, or emotional games. Healthy relationships are built on emotional honesty, respect, consistency, communication, and mutual growth. However, before you can experience healthy love with someone else, you must first develop a healthier relationship with yourself. The relationship mirror reflects the quality of your self-relationship more than anything else. If you do not value yourself, you may accept less than you deserve. If you fear abandonment, you may lose yourself trying to keep others close. If you struggle with self-worth, rejection may feel devastating because you already question your value internally. This is why self-awareness is one of the most powerful tools for creating healthier relationships. Self-awareness allows you to recognize emotional triggers without becoming controlled by them. It helps you communicate your needs clearly instead of expecting others to read your mind. It teaches you how to set boundaries without guilt. Most importantly, it helps you separate your identity from the validation or rejection of others. The goal is not to become emotionally perfect. No human being is free from emotional struggles or insecurities. The goal is to become emotionally conscious. Conscious people recognize their patterns, take responsibility for their healing, and approach relationships with greater wisdom and intentionality. As you continue reading this book, you will begin identifying the emotional mirrors that have shaped your relationship experiences. You will recognize patterns that once operated unconsciously. You will understand how your fears, beliefs, and emotional wounds influence the way you love. Most importantly, you will learn that relationships are not punishments. They are opportunities for growth. Every relationship teaches something. Some relationships teach us how to love. Others teach us how to heal. Some teach us about our strength. Others reveal our boundaries. Even painful relationships carry lessons that can transform us if we are willing to learn. The mirror principle reminds us that love is not just about finding the right person. It is also about becoming emotionally healthy enough to create the kind of relationship we truly desire. The healthier your relationship with yourself becomes, the healthier your relationships with others will be. Before moving forward, take a moment to honestly reflect on your own relationship history. Look beyond the names and circumstances. Focus on the emotional patterns. Ask yourself, what keeps repeating in my relationships? Do I constantly feel abandoned, unseen, controlled, rejected, or emotionally exhausted? Do I lose myself trying to keep love? Do I struggle to trust? Do I seek validation more than connection? Do not judge yourself for the answers. Awareness is not weakness. Awareness is growth. The patterns you recognize today are the patterns you can begin changing tomorrow. Your relationships are mirrors, but mirrors do not exist to shame you. They exist to help you see clearly. And when you finally see yourself clearly, you gain the power to heal, grow, and love in a healthier way than ever before. Chapter 2. Attraction and the Wounded Self: Why We Fall for Certain People. Attraction is one of the most mysterious and powerful human experiences. It can feel immediate, intense, emotional, and almost impossible to explain. Sometimes we meet someone and feel an instant connection that pulls us toward them before we even fully understand why. We call it chemistry. We call it passion. We call it fate. But beneath the surface of attraction lies something much deeper than physical appearance or romantic excitement. Attraction is often connected to our emotional history, our unmet needs, our wounds, and the subconscious beliefs we carry about love and ourselves. Many people believe they choose partners purely based on preference and compatibility. However, attraction is heavily influenced by emotional conditioning. We are often drawn toward people who awaken familiar feelings within us, even when those feelings are unhealthy. The painful truth is that many of us do not simply fall in love with people. We fall in love with emotional patterns that feel familiar to our nervous system. This is why understanding attraction is so important. If you do not understand what is driving your attraction, you may continue repeating painful relationship cycles without realizing it. You may mistake emotional intensity for love. You may confuse inconsistency with excitement. You may become attached to people who trigger your wounds instead of supporting your healing. The wounded self often seeks love not from a place of emotional wholeness, but from a place of emotional hunger. When people carry unresolved pain, rejection, abandonment, or insecurity, they unconsciously look for relationships that will finally give them the validation, comfort, or emotional safety they have been missing. Unfortunately, unresolved wounds can distort attraction and lead people toward unhealthy relationships disguised as passionate connections. One of the strongest influences on attraction is childhood experience. Long before we entered romantic relationships, we learned emotional patterns from the environments we grew up in. Childhood teaches us what love feels like, what connection looks like, and what we must do to receive affection and approval. These early experiences shape our attachment style, emotional expectations, and relationship habits later in life. If a child grows up in an emotionally supportive environment where love is consistent, safe, and nurturing, they are more likely to develop healthy emotional security. But if a child grows up feeling ignored, criticized, emotionally abandoned, or forced to earn love through performance or people-pleasing, those experiences often follow them into adulthood. The child becomes an adult searching for love, while still carrying emotional wounds that influence their choices and reactions. This is why so many people unknowingly recreate emotional dynamics from childhood in their adult relationships. The mind seeks familiarity, even when familiarity is painful. Someone who grew up feeling emotionally neglected may become attracted to distant or unavailable partners because emotional distance feels normal. Someone who experienced unpredictable affection may become addicted to inconsistent relationships because emotional instability feels familiar. Without awareness, people repeat emotional environments they have known before. This is closely connected to attachment styles. Attachment styles are emotional patterns developed early in life that shape how people connect, trust, communicate, and respond in relationships. Understanding attachment styles can help explain why certain relationships feel so emotionally intense, and why people react differently to love and intimacy. A secure attachment style develops when a person experiences consistent emotional support, safety, and validation growing up. Secure individuals generally feel comfortable with closeness, communication, vulnerability, and independence. They do not constantly fear abandonment, nor do they avoid emotional intimacy. They can express needs openly, trust healthy partners, and maintain emotional balance during conflict. Securely attached people understand that love does not require emotional games, constant anxiety, or losing oneself to maintain connection. An anxious attachment style often develops when love and attention are inconsistent during childhood. Sometimes emotional needs were met, and other times they were ignored. As adults, anxiously attached individuals may fear abandonment deeply. They often seek constant reassurance, overthink communication, become emotionally attached quickly, and feel intense anxiety when relationships feel uncertain. They may confuse emotional intensity with love because unpredictability feels familiar to their nervous system. They want closeness desperately, yet their fear of rejection can create emotional pressure within relationships. An avoidant attachment style usually develops when emotional vulnerability feels unsafe or unsupported during childhood. These individuals often learn to suppress emotions and rely heavily on independence. As adults, avoidantly attached people may struggle with emotional closeness, vulnerability, and commitment. They may pull away when relationships become emotionally deep, not because they do not care, but because intimacy triggers discomfort. They fear losing freedom, becoming emotionally overwhelmed, or depending too much on others. Fearful avoidant attachment combines both anxious and avoidant tendencies. These individuals crave love and connection, while simultaneously fearing it. Often shaped by emotionally chaotic or traumatic environments, they may alternate between seeking intimacy and pushing it away. Relationships can feel emotionally confusing because part of them desires closeness, while another part fears emotional pain and rejection. This internal conflict creates unstable relationship dynamics that often leave both partners emotionally exhausted. Understanding attachment styles is not about labeling yourself permanently. Human beings are capable of growth, healing, and emotional transformation. Attachment patterns can change with self-awareness, healing, and healthier relationship experiences. The purpose of understanding attachment is to recognize emotional habits that may be shaping your attraction and behavior unconsciously. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming chemistry automatically means compatibility. Chemistry can feel powerful, exciting, and emotionally overwhelming, but chemistry alone does not create healthy relationships. In many cases, strong chemistry is actually emotional activation. It is your nervous system responding to familiarity, emotional unpredictability, or unresolved wounds. This explains why some people feel bored in healthy relationships. If someone is accustomed to emotional chaos, inconsistency, or having to fight for love, calm and stable relationships may initially feel unfamiliar. Healthy love may not trigger the same emotional highs and lows as toxic relationships, but that does not make it less meaningful. In fact, emotional peace is often a sign of emotional safety, not lack of passion. Compatibility is built on shared values, emotional maturity, communication, respect, trust, and mutual effort. Chemistry may create attraction, but compatibility determines whether a relationship can remain healthy and sustainable over time. Many painful relationships survive on chemistry alone while lacking emotional security and healthy partnership. Another important concept to understand is trauma bonding. Trauma bonds occur when emotional pain becomes deeply connected to attachment. These relationships often involve cycles of affection, withdrawal, inconsistency, emotional highs, and emotional lows. The unpredictability creates emotional addiction because the brain becomes attached to the temporary moments of love, validation, or affection that follow emotional pain. Trauma bonds are not healthy love. They are emotional survival patterns built around inconsistency and psychological dependence. In these relationships, a person may feel unable to leave despite feeling emotionally drained, anxious, or hurt. They become attached, not because the relationship is healthy, but because the emotional cycle itself becomes addictive. Healthy connection feels different. Healthy love is consistent. It does not rely on manipulation, confusion, fear, or emotional instability to maintain attachment. Healthy relationships create emotional safety, rather than emotional chaos. They allow both people to feel respected, heard, valued, and emotionally secure without constantly questioning their worth. One of the clearest signs of unresolved wounds in relationships is emotional dependency. Emotional dependency happens when a person's emotional stability self-worth, or identity becomes heavily dependent on another person's validation, presence, or approval. Instead of love being a healthy addition to life, it becomes the center of emotional survival. Emotionally dependent individuals may fear being alone intensely. They may tolerate unhealthy treatment to avoid abandonment. They may lose personal boundaries, neglect their own needs, or sacrifice their identity to maintain connection. Their happiness rises and falls based on the other person's attention, affection, or mood. This level of dependency creates emotional imbalance because no relationship can permanently fill the emotional emptiness created by unresolved self-worth wounds. Relationships are meant to complement your life, not become your entire emotional foundation. True emotional health begins when you realize your value does not depend on whether someone chooses you, texts you, validates you, or stays with you. Healing attraction patterns requires self-awareness and honesty. You must become willing to examine not only who you are attracted to, but why. Why do certain people feel irresistible to you? Why do emotionally unavailable people feel exciting? Why does emotional inconsistency increase your attachment instead of warning you? Why do you confuse being needed with being loved? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are transformative. They help you separate healthy love from wounded attachment. They help you recognize when attraction is being driven by emotional wounds rather than emotional alignment. As you reflect on your relationship history, pay attention to recurring emotional themes. Do you constantly feel anxious in relationships? Do you lose yourself trying to keep people? Do you become attracted to people who cannot fully love you back? Do you fear emotional vulnerability? Do you seek validation more than connection? These reflections are not meant to create guilt. They are meant to create awareness. Awareness gives you the power to change what no longer serves you. The goal is not to stop feeling attraction. The goal is to develop healthier attraction patterns rooted in emotional security, self-worth, and conscious connection. Healing allows you to stop chasing relationships that reopen old wounds and start choosing relationships that support growth, peace, and emotional stability. You deserve relationships where love does not feel like emotional survival. You deserve love that does not require constant anxiety, confusion, or self-abandonment. You deserve connection that feels safe, honest, and emotionally balanced. Most importantly, you deserve to understand that your wounds are not your identity. Your past may explain your patterns, but it does not have to define your future. Healing is possible. Emotional growth is possible. Healthy love is possible. The more you heal yourself, the more your attraction patterns begin to change. You stop chasing what hurts you. You stop confusing chaos with passion. You stop seeking validation from emotionally unavailable people. Instead, you begin valuing consistency, emotional maturity, honesty, and peace. And that is when love stops being a repetition of old pain and becomes a reflection of your healing. Chapter 3. Love and Self-Worth. You cannot love beyond how you see yourself. One of the greatest truths about relationships is this: the way you see yourself will always influence the way you allow others to treat you. Love and self-worth are deeply connected. No matter how much affection, attention, or validation another person gives you, if you secretly believe you are not enough, those insecurities will eventually shape your relationships. You cannot consistently experience healthy love while carrying a deeply unhealthy relationship with yourself. Many people spend years searching for the perfect relationship, without realizing the foundation of every relationship begins within. The quality of your self-worth affects the partners you choose, the behavior you tolerate, the boundaries you set, the way you communicate, and the amount of emotional peace you experience in love. Your relationship with yourself quietly determines the standard for every relationship you enter. This is why people with low self-worth often find themselves trapped in painful relationship cycles. They may stay in relationships that drain them emotionally. They may tolerate disrespect because they fear losing connection. They may constantly seek reassurance because they do not feel secure within themselves. They may overgive, oversacrifice, and overcompromise in hopes of finally feeling valued and chosen. Deep down, they are not only searching for love. They are searching for proof that they are worthy of love. The problem is that no relationship can permanently heal the wounds created by poor self-worth. Validation from another person may temporarily make you feel wanted, attractive, or important, but temporary validation is not the same as lasting confidence. If your identity depends entirely on someone else's approval, your emotional stability will constantly rise and fall based on how they treat you. When they give attention, you feel worthy. When they withdraw, you feel broken. This creates emotional instability because your value becomes attached to someone else's behavior instead of your own internal sense of worth. Self-worth is not arrogance. It is not believing you are superior to others. True self-worth is the quiet understanding that your value does not decrease because someone cannot recognize it. It is the ability to respect yourself enough to protect your peace, your boundaries, and your emotional well-being. It is knowing that love should add to your life, not destroy your identity. Many relationship struggles are rooted in the fear of abandonment. People are often willing to betray themselves in order to avoid being left by others. They silence their needs, tolerate mistreatment, ignore red flags, and shrink themselves emotionally because they believe losing the relationship would be worse than losing themselves. This fear usually does not begin in adulthood. It often originates from earlier emotional experiences where love felt conditional, inconsistent, or uncertain. A child who only received affection when performing well may grow into an adult who believes they must constantly earn love through pleasing others. A child who experienced emotional neglect may become an adult who fears being abandoned and overcompensates in relationships to maintain connection. A person who grew up feeling unseen may become desperate for validation from romantic partners because romantic attention temporarily fills emotional emptiness. This is why healing self-worth requires looking deeper than relationship behavior alone. You must examine the beliefs you carry about yourself. Many people unconsciously believe things such as, "I am not lovable enough," "I have to work hard to keep love," "I will eventually be abandoned," or "my value depends on how others see me." These hidden beliefs shape relationship choices more than most people realize. When self-worth is low, people often settle for less than they deserve because they do not truly believe they deserve better. Settling does not always happen because someone lacks options. Sometimes people settle because they lack confidence in their worth. They convince themselves to accept emotionally unavailable partners, inconsistent behavior, dishonesty, disrespect, or emotional neglect, because part of them believes unhealthy love is better than no love at all. But settling comes at a painful cost. Every time you ignore your own emotional needs to maintain a relationship, you send yourself the message that your feelings do not matter. Every time you tolerate behavior that damages your peace, you weaken your self-respect. Every time you abandon your standards out of fear of being alone, you teach yourself that connection is more important than your own well-being. Over time, this creates emotional exhaustion. Many people become drained in relationships because they are constantly over-giving while neglecting themselves. They become the caretaker, the fixer, the rescuer, and the emotional provider, while silently hoping someone will finally give them the same love they pour into others. But healthy love was never meant to require self-sacrifice at the expense of your emotional health. Overgiving is often misunderstood as love, when it is actually fear. Fear says, if I give enough, maybe they will stay. Fear says, if I become everything they need, maybe I will finally feel chosen. Fear says, if I keep proving my value, maybe I will not be abandoned. This creates relationships built on emotional survival, instead of genuine connection. True love does not require you to constantly earn your place in someone's life. Healthy relationships involve effort from both people. They involve mutual respect, reciprocity, emotional safety, and balanced support. Love should not feel like a constant performance designed to secure approval. One of the clearest signs that self-worth needs healing is the addiction to validation through romantic attention. Many people unconsciously use relationships to determine their value. Compliments become emotional fuel. Attention becomes proof of worthiness. Being chosen becomes evidence that they are enough. This is why rejection can feel devastating to someone whose identity depends on external validation. It is not just the relationship ending that hurts. It is the collapse of the emotional validation they were using to define themselves. This is also why some people remain trapped in unhealthy relationships long after they recognize the damage being done. The fear of losing validation becomes stronger than the desire for peace. They would rather remain emotionally connected to pain than emotionally disconnected from attention. But healing begins when you realize your worth cannot be built on unstable foundations. External approval will always fluctuate because people change, relationships change, and circumstances change. If your confidence depends entirely on external sources, your self-esteem will remain fragile. Lasting confidence must be built internally. Internal confidence develops when you begin recognizing your value independent of relationship status, romantic attention, or outside approval. It grows when you stop measuring your worth by how desired you are, and start measuring it by how deeply you respect yourself. It grows when you honor your needs, protect your emotional health, and stop abandoning yourself for connection. This kind of confidence changes relationships completely. When you know your worth, you no longer chase people who repeatedly show you they cannot value you properly. You stop begging for consistency, honesty, affection, or respect, because you understand healthy love should not require constant pleading. You become less afraid of rejection, because rejection no longer defines your identity. Instead of desperately seeking validation, you begin seeking alignment, peace, emotional maturity, and mutual respect. One of the most important ways self-worth expresses itself is through boundaries. Boundaries are not punishments. They are acts of self-respect. Boundaries communicate what you will and will not tolerate in your life. They protect your emotional well-being, your energy, your peace, and your identity. People with low self-worth often struggle with boundaries because they fear disappointing others or losing relationships. They say yes when they mean no. They tolerate disrespect to avoid conflict. They remain silent about their needs because they fear rejection. But every weak boundary eventually creates resentment, because suppressed needs do not disappear. They build emotional frustration over time. Healthy boundaries are not selfish. They are necessary. Boundaries teach people how to treat you. They show that you value yourself enough to protect your emotional space. A person who truly values you will respect your boundaries, not punish you for having them. Setting boundaries may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are used to prioritizing others over yourself. Healing self-worth often requires learning how to disappoint people without feeling guilty. It requires understanding that protecting your peace is not cruelty. It is emotional maturity. Rebuilding self-worth is not something that happens overnight. It is a process of reconnecting with yourself after years of seeking value in places outside of you. It begins with awareness. You must first recognize the ways low self-worth may be affecting your relationships and choices. Healing also requires changing the way you speak to yourself internally. Many people carry harsh inner voices, shaped by criticism, rejection, or emotional pain. They constantly tell themselves they are not attractive enough, successful enough, lovable enough, or worthy enough. Over time, these beliefs become emotional prisons. You cannot build healthy love while constantly attacking yourself internally. Self-worth grows when you begin treating yourself with compassion instead of constant criticism. It grows when you stop defining yourself by your mistakes, your heartbreaks, or other people's inability to love you properly. Another powerful part of rebuilding self-worth is learning how to be alone without feeling empty. Many people stay in unhealthy relationships because solitude forces them to confront emotions they have been avoiding. But being alone is not the same as being unworthy. Solitude can become a place of healing, self-discovery, and emotional growth when you stop viewing it as rejection. When you learn how to enjoy your own company, relationships stop becoming emotional necessities and start becoming conscious choices. You no longer seek people to complete you, because you understand you are already whole. Love becomes an addition to your life, rather than the source of your identity. As your self-worth grows, your standards begin to change naturally. You become less attracted to inconsistency, manipulation, and emotional chaos. You stop romanticizing people who cannot meet your emotional needs. You stop confusing attention with love. Instead, you begin valuing emotional safety, honesty, consistency, communication, and mutual effort. Most importantly, you begin understanding that healthy love starts with the relationship you build with yourself. The more you value yourself, the less willing you become to accept relationships that damage your emotional well-being. The more you heal internally, the healthier your external relationships become. You are worthy of love that does not require self-abandonment. You are worthy of relationships where your needs matter, your voice is respected, and your emotional health is protected. You are worthy of love that complements your identity instead of destroying it. But before someone else can fully honor your value, you must first recognize it yourself. The way you love yourself teaches others how to love you. And when self-worth becomes your foundation, love stops being a desperate search for validation and becomes a healthy expression of connection, peace, and emotional wholeness. Chapter 4. Emotional Triggers and Hidden Wounds: Why Relationships Hurt So Deeply. Few things in life have the power to affect us emotionally the way relationships do. A stranger's opinion may bother you for a moment, but the words or actions of someone you love can stay in your heart for days, months, or even years. Relationships have the ability to make us feel deeply valued, deeply connected, and emotionally alive. Yet they also have the power to awaken pain we did not even realize we were carrying. This is why love can feel both beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Many people enter relationships believing the goal is simply to find happiness, but relationships often become emotional mirrors that reveal hidden wounds beneath the surface. Love does not create all of our pain. In many cases, it exposes pain that already exists within us. Relationships trigger emotions so deeply because they touch our most vulnerable needs: the need to feel accepted, safe, desired, understood, and emotionally secure. When these emotional needs feel threatened, the body and mind react intensely. Suddenly, a disagreement feels much bigger than the situation itself. A delayed response feels like rejection. Emotional distance feels like abandonment. Criticism feels like proof that we are not enough. What appears to be a simple conflict on the outside often activates emotional wounds that were formed long before the relationship began. This is what emotional activation truly is. Emotional activation occurs when a present experience awakens unresolved emotions from the past. The reaction becomes stronger than the current moment, because the nervous system is not only responding to what is happening now. It is also responding to everything the situation emotionally represents. This explains why two people can experience the exact same situation and react completely differently. One person may see temporary silence as harmless, while another experiences intense anxiety and fear. One person may handle conflict calmly, while another becomes defensive, emotional, or withdrawn. The difference is often connected to emotional history, not just personality. Many conflicts inside relationships have very little to do with the present moment alone. Beneath arguments about communication, attention, time, or affection are often deeper emotional fears. Someone may not truly be angry about a missed phone call. They may be reacting to a deeper fear of being ignored or forgotten. Another person may not simply be upset about criticism. They may be reliving years of feeling inadequate or emotionally unsafe. This is why unresolved childhood wounds often resurface in adult relationships. Relationships create emotional closeness, and closeness has a way of reopening emotional memories stored deep within us. A person who grew up feeling emotionally neglected may become highly sensitive to feeling unimportant in relationships. Someone who experienced rejection growing up may constantly fear abandonment. A person who lived in emotionally unpredictable environments may struggle to trust stability and consistency because chaos became emotionally familiar. Childhood is where many emotional beliefs about love begin. Children naturally absorb emotional experiences and turn them into beliefs about themselves and relationships. A child who receives consistent affection and emotional support often learns that love is safe and dependable. But a child who experiences criticism, neglect, abandonment, or emotional inconsistency may develop beliefs such as, "I am not enough," "love can disappear," or "I must earn affection." These beliefs rarely disappear automatically with age. They often remain hidden beneath the surface until relationships activate them. This is why adult relationships can feel so emotionally overwhelming. The pain is not always coming only from the current relationship. Sometimes, it is connected to younger versions of ourselves that never fully healed. One of the deepest emotional wounds people carry is the fear of rejection. Rejection hurts because human beings naturally desire connection and belonging. When someone we care about withdraws emotionally, criticizes us, or leaves us, it can trigger feelings of inadequacy and shame. People who carry unresolved rejection wounds often become extremely sensitive to anything that feels like emotional disapproval. They may overthink conversations, seek constant reassurance, or interpret small changes in behavior as signs of abandonment. Their nervous system becomes hyper-alert because part of them expects rejection to happen again. This fear can lead people to become emotionally dependent, overly accommodating, or afraid to express their true needs in relationships. Another deeply painful wound is betrayal. Betrayal damages emotional trust because it creates fear around vulnerability itself. When someone has been lied to, cheated on, manipulated, or emotionally deceived, the nervous system learns to associate closeness with danger. Even after entering new relationships, the fear remains active beneath the surface. This is why some people struggle to trust healthy partners, even when there is no evidence of dishonesty. Their emotional reactions are shaped by past pain that has not yet fully healed. Betrayal wounds can cause hypervigilance, emotional guardedness, suspicion, and fear of emotional intimacy. The heart wants love, but fear keeps preparing for pain. Abandonment wounds are equally powerful. Abandonment is not only physical absence. Emotional abandonment can happen when a person feels emotionally unseen, unsupported, dismissed, or disconnected. Many people carry abandonment fears without fully realizing it. These fears often appear through clinginess, fear of being alone, people-pleasing, emotional dependency, or panic when relationships feel uncertain. When abandonment wounds are activated, people may react intensely because the situation feels emotionally threatening. They may become desperate to fix conflict immediately, fearful of emotional distance, or willing to sacrifice their own needs just to preserve connection. Deep down, they fear that losing the relationship means losing emotional safety itself. The challenge with emotional wounds is that they often cause people to react automatically instead of consciously. Emotional reactions happen quickly because the nervous system is trying to protect itself from perceived pain. A person who feels triggered may lash out, withdraw, shut down emotionally, become defensive, or seek reassurance compulsively. In those moments, the body reacts before the mind fully processes what is happening. This is why learning to respond instead of react is one of the most important skills for healthy relationships. Reacting is driven by emotional survival. Responding is driven by emotional awareness. Reactions are impulsive and rooted in fear, pain, or defensiveness. Responses are thoughtful, intentional, and emotionally grounded. Learning to respond begins with self-awareness. You must become willing to pause and ask yourself deeper questions during emotional moments. What exactly am I feeling right now? Why does this situation affect me so strongly? Is my reaction connected only to the present moment, or is it touching an older emotional wound? What fear is being activated inside me? These questions create emotional space between the trigger and the reaction. That space is where growth begins. Emotional awareness does not mean suppressing feelings or pretending not to hurt. Healing is not about becoming emotionally numb. It is about understanding your emotions instead of becoming controlled by them. Your emotions are important signals, but they are not always accurate reflections of reality. Sometimes emotions reflect unresolved fears more than present truth. For example, a partner needing personal space does not automatically mean abandonment. A disagreement does not automatically mean rejection. Delayed communication does not always mean loss of love. But when emotional wounds remain unhealed, the mind interprets situations through fear rather than clarity. Healing requires learning how to separate past pain from present experiences. This is not always easy, because emotional wounds can feel incredibly real and powerful. But awareness slowly helps you recognize when old emotional patterns are influencing current relationships. One of the most powerful steps in healing is taking responsibility for your emotional growth without blaming yourself for your wounds. You are not weak because you have triggers. You are human. Everyone carries emotional pain from experiences that shape them. The goal is not to shame yourself for your wounds. The goal is to understand them, so they no longer control your life and relationships. Healing through emotional awareness means becoming curious about your emotional world instead of avoiding it. Many people spend years distracting themselves from emotional pain because vulnerability feels uncomfortable. But avoidance does not heal wounds. Suppressed emotions often reappear through relationship conflict, anxiety, emotional instability, or unhealthy coping habits. True healing happens when you become willing to face yourself honestly. It happens when you stop pretending certain experiences did not hurt you. It happens when you stop judging yourself for having emotional needs. It happens when you stop viewing emotional sensitivity as weakness and start recognizing it as an invitation for deeper healing. As emotional awareness grows, relationships begin to change. You become less reactive and more intentional. You stop expecting partners to heal wounds they did not create. You communicate more clearly about your needs and fears, instead of acting them out unconsciously. You become more compassionate toward yourself and others, because you understand that everyone carries unseen emotional struggles. You also begin recognizing the difference between healthy emotional discomfort and unhealthy relationship dynamics. Not every trigger means the relationship is toxic. Sometimes relationships trigger growth because they force us to confront parts of ourselves that need healing. However, emotional awareness also helps you recognize when a relationship is genuinely harmful rather than simply emotionally challenging. The beautiful thing about healing is that emotional wounds do not have to define your future. Pain may shape your patterns temporarily, but awareness gives you the power to create new patterns. Healing allows you to experience relationships from a place of emotional security rather than emotional survival. As you heal, rejection loses some of its power because you no longer define your worth through others' choices. Betrayal loses some of its control because you learn to trust yourself again. Abandonment fears begin to soften because you realize your value and identity do not disappear when relationships change. Most importantly, healing teaches you that love should not constantly feel like fear. Healthy love creates emotional safety, not emotional chaos. It allows room for vulnerability, honesty, communication, and growth. It supports healing rather than continuously reopening wounds without accountability or care. Every emotional trigger carries a message. Instead of asking, "Why am I so emotional?" begin asking, "What is this emotion trying to show me?" Triggers often reveal the exact places within us that need compassion, attention, and healing. The goal is not to become trigger-free. The goal is to become emotionally conscious enough that your triggers no longer control your behavior, destroy your peace, or sabotage your relationships. Healing begins the moment you stop running from your emotional wounds and start listening to them with honesty and compassion. Your pain is not proof that you are broken. It is proof that there are parts of you still asking to be healed. And once you begin healing those hidden wounds, relationships stop becoming battlefields of emotional survival and start becoming spaces for growth, connection, peace, and authentic love. Chapter 5. Communication as a window to the soul. What your conversations reveal about you. Communication is one of the most powerful forces in any relationship. Long before relationships fail emotionally, they often fail conversationally. The way people speak, listen, express emotions, handle conflict, and respond to vulnerability reveals far more than words alone ever could. Communication is not simply about talking. It is a reflection of emotional maturity, self-awareness, inner wounds, fears, needs, and the ability to create connection. Every conversation in a relationship carries emotional meaning beneath the surface. A person's tone, silence, defensiveness, openness, patience, and honesty often reveal what is happening within them emotionally. This is why communication is truly a window to the soul. Through communication, people unconsciously reveal their insecurities, emotional habits, fears of rejection, struggles with vulnerability, and even their capacity for love. Healthy communication creates emotional safety. Unhealthy communication creates emotional distance. Relationships are not destroyed by conflict alone. They are destroyed by the inability to communicate through conflict with honesty, maturity, and emotional respect. Many people assume love alone is enough to sustain relationships, but without healthy communication, even strong emotional connections begin to weaken over time. One of the biggest reasons communication becomes difficult is because many people are reacting emotionally instead of communicating consciously. There is a major difference between reacting and communicating, yet most people confuse the two. Reacting is driven by emotion without reflection. Communication is driven by awareness and intention. When someone reacts emotionally, they are often speaking from pain, fear, defensiveness, or emotional survival. Reactions are impulsive. They happen quickly because the nervous system feels emotionally threatened. This is why people say hurtful things they later regret, shut down emotionally during conflict, or become defensive before truly listening. The reaction becomes focused on self-protection rather than understanding. True communication requires emotional regulation. It requires the ability to pause, process emotions, and express feelings in a way that creates connection instead of destruction. Communication says, "I want to understand and be understood." Reaction says, "I need to protect myself right now." Many relationship conflicts escalate because both people are reacting instead of communicating. One person feels unheard, so they become aggressive. The other feels attacked, so they become defensive. Soon the conversation is no longer about solving the issue. It becomes about winning, proving a point, avoiding blame, or protecting the ego. Defensiveness is one of the biggest barriers to healthy communication. Defensive communication often develops from insecurity, fear of criticism, shame, or unresolved emotional wounds. A defensive person may immediately justify their behavior, deny responsibility, interrupt, shift blame, or emotionally withdraw whenever difficult conversations arise. Even gentle feedback may feel like a personal attack, because deep down they fear inadequacy or rejection. The problem with defensiveness is that it blocks emotional intimacy. When people constantly defend themselves, they stop listening openly. Instead of hearing the emotional needs behind someone's words, they focus only on protecting themselves from discomfort. This creates emotional disconnection, because neither person feels truly heard or understood. Defensive communication is rarely about arrogance alone. Often, it is connected to emotional fear. Some people grew up in environments where mistakes were punished harshly, criticism felt unsafe, or vulnerability led to shame. As adults, they may unconsciously protect themselves by avoiding accountability or emotional openness. Their nervous system associates criticism with emotional danger. Understanding this does not excuse harmful communication patterns, but it does create awareness. Many unhealthy communication habits are learned responses shaped by emotional experiences. The beautiful thing about awareness is that patterns can change when people become willing to heal and grow. Communication styles generally fall into different patterns, and these patterns often reveal emotional conditioning beneath the surface. Passive communication occurs when individuals suppress their thoughts, emotions, or needs to avoid conflict or rejection. Passive communicators often struggle to express themselves honestly because they fear upsetting others or being disliked. They may say it's fine when they are hurt, remain silent when boundaries are crossed, or avoid difficult conversations altogether. At first glance, passive communication may appear peaceful, but suppressed emotions do not disappear. Over time, silence creates resentment, emotional exhaustion, and feelings of invisibility. Relationships suffer when people constantly abandon their own emotional needs to maintain harmony. Aggressive communication exists on the opposite side. Aggressive communicators often express emotions through blame, criticism, control, intimidation, or hostility. Instead of seeking understanding, they try to dominate conversations or force their perspective onto others. This communication style is usually rooted in unresolved anger, fear, insecurity, or emotional pain. Aggression often becomes a shield protecting deeper vulnerability. Some people communicate aggressively because they believe power and control protect them from emotional hurt. Others grew up in environments where yelling, criticism, or emotional volatility were normalized. Unfortunately, aggressive communication damages emotional safety because people begin fearing conversations instead of feeling connected through them. Passive-aggressive communication combines suppression and indirect hostility. Instead of expressing emotions openly, passive-aggressive individuals communicate through sarcasm, avoidance, subtle punishment, emotional withdrawal, or hidden resentment. They may avoid direct honesty while still expressing anger indirectly. This creates confusion and emotional tension because feelings remain unresolved beneath the surface. Healthy communication, however, looks very different. Healthy communicators express emotions honestly while maintaining respect for themselves and others. They can communicate needs without manipulation, anger without cruelty, and disagreement without emotional destruction. Healthy communication is not about avoiding conflict altogether. It is about handling conflict in ways that strengthen understanding rather than damage connection. One of the most important aspects of healthy communication is listening. Most people do not truly listen during conversations. Instead, they listen to defend themselves, prepare responses, or prove their point. They hear words but miss emotions. They focus on reacting instead of understanding. Listening to understand requires emotional maturity because it demands presence and empathy. It requires setting aside the immediate need to be right in order to truly hear another person's experience. This does not mean agreeing with everything someone says. It means creating space for their emotions and perspective without immediately becoming defensive. When people feel genuinely heard, relationships become emotionally safer. Emotional safety grows when individuals feel their feelings matter, their voice is respected, and their vulnerability will not be used against them. Many people underestimate how healing it is to simply feel understood. Unfortunately, many individuals enter relationships carrying emotional wounds that make listening difficult. Someone who fears criticism may hear attack even when none is intended. Someone who struggles with insecurity may interpret feedback as rejection. Someone who fears abandonment may panic during disagreements because conflict feels emotionally threatening. This is why emotional awareness is essential for healthy communication. Communication problems are rarely just communication problems. They are often emotional problems expressed through communication. Underneath arguments about chores, attention, time, or texting habits are usually deeper emotional needs. One person may simply want reassurance. Another may want appreciation. Another may fear emotional disconnection. The surface conversation rarely tells the full emotional story. This is why emotional honesty is so important in relationships. Emotional honesty means expressing what you truly feel, instead of hiding behind anger, silence, sarcasm, or emotional walls. Many people say, "I'm angry," when underneath they actually feel hurt, afraid, ignored, or insecure. Anger often becomes the protective emotion, covering more vulnerable feelings. Vulnerability is difficult because it requires emotional exposure. It means allowing someone to see your fears, insecurities, disappointments, and emotional needs honestly. Many people avoid vulnerability because they fear rejection, judgment, or emotional pain. They would rather appear strong than emotionally exposed. But without vulnerability, emotional intimacy cannot fully exist. Real connection requires honesty. It requires the courage to say, "I feel hurt, I need reassurance, I am afraid," or "I want to feel closer to you." Vulnerability is not weakness. In healthy relationships, vulnerability becomes the bridge that deepens emotional closeness. Of course, vulnerability should exist alongside emotional safety and discernment. Not every person deserves unrestricted access to your emotional world. Healthy vulnerability grows in relationships built on trust, respect, and consistency. But many relationships fail emotionally because both people are hiding behind defenses instead of allowing themselves to be truly seen. Communication also reveals how people view themselves internally. A person with healthy self-worth can usually communicate needs more clearly because they believe their feelings matter. A person with unresolved insecurity may struggle with communication because they fear rejection or conflict. The way people communicate often mirrors the relationship they have with themselves. This is why improving communication requires more than learning conversation techniques alone. It requires inner healing. It requires emotional regulation, self-awareness, accountability, empathy, and the willingness to grow beyond unhealthy patterns. One of the most powerful exercises for healthier intimacy is learning how to pause before responding during emotional conversations. Instead of immediately reacting, take a moment to identify what you are truly feeling beneath the surface. Ask yourself whether your response is coming from understanding or emotional defense. This simple pause creates emotional space where healthier communication becomes possible. Another transformative practice is learning to communicate feelings without accusation. Instead of saying, "You never care about me," healthy communication sounds like, "I feel disconnected and would like more emotional closeness." This shifts the conversation away from blame and toward understanding. Creating intentional conversations around emotional needs can also deepen intimacy. Many couples rarely discuss fears, insecurities, emotional triggers, or relationship expectations openly. Instead, they wait until conflict explodes before discussing important emotions. Healthy intimacy grows when people communicate consistently, instead of only during emotional crises. It is also important to learn how to apologize sincerely. A healthy apology is not about protecting pride. It is about taking responsibility and showing care for the emotional impact of your actions. Accountability strengthens relationships because it builds trust and emotional safety. As communication improves, relationships begin transforming. Conversations become less about control and more about connection. Conflict becomes less destructive and more productive. Emotional honesty replaces emotional guessing. People feel safer expressing themselves without fear of being dismissed or attacked. Most importantly, healthy communication allows relationships to become places of growth instead of emotional warfare. When people learn to communicate consciously, they stop viewing each other as enemies during difficult moments. Instead, they approach challenges as partners seeking understanding together. The truth is that communication will either deepen love or slowly weaken it. Words have the power to heal or wound, connect or divide, comfort or destroy. But communication is not only about speaking differently. It is about becoming emotionally healthier internally. The healthier you become emotionally, the healthier your communication becomes. And the healthier your communication becomes, the deeper your relationships can grow. Every conversation reveals something about the heart. The question is whether your communication is building walls or building connection. When communication becomes rooted in awareness, empathy, honesty, and emotional courage, relationships stop being places where people hide from one another and become places where people truly see, hear, and understand each other deeply. Chapter 6. Boundaries, Standards, and Self-Respect, Teaching People How to Treat You. One of the greatest lessons relationships teach us is that love without boundaries eventually becomes emotional exhaustion. Many people enter relationships believing love means endless sacrifice, unlimited access, constant availability, and tolerating behaviors that slowly damage their peace. They confuse self-abandonment with loyalty, and emotional suffering with commitment. But healthy love was never meant to require the destruction of your identity, emotional well-being, or self-respect. The truth is, people learn how to treat you by what you consistently allow. Your boundaries, standards, and level of self-respect silently teach others what behavior is acceptable in your life. When boundaries are weak or non-existent, relationships often become emotionally draining because there is no protection around your time, energy, emotions, or peace. But when boundaries are healthy, relationships become safer, more balanced, and more emotionally respectful. Many people misunderstand boundaries because they fear boundaries will push others away. In reality, healthy boundaries do not destroy relationships. They protect healthy relationships and expose unhealthy ones. Boundaries are not walls designed to isolate you from people. They are guidelines that protect your emotional health while allowing genuine connection to exist. A person with healthy boundaries understands that love and self-respect must coexist. They understand that saying yes to everything is not love. Allowing disrespect is not kindness. Constant emotional sacrifice is not emotional maturity. Real love does not require you to betray yourself in order to keep someone else comfortable. Healthy boundaries are expressions of self-worth. They communicate, "I value myself enough to protect my peace, my emotional health, and my needs." Boundaries teach others how you expect to be treated, but more importantly, they reflect how you treat yourself internally. Many people struggle with boundaries because they fear conflict, rejection, abandonment, or disappointing others. They have spent so much of their lives prioritizing other people's comfort that they feel guilty whenever they choose themselves. This guilt often begins in childhood or early emotional experiences where love felt conditional. Some people were raised to believe being good meant always being agreeable, self-sacrificing, and accommodating. Others learned that expressing needs led to criticism, rejection, or emotional punishment. Over time, they became people pleasers who measured their worth by how much they could do for others. Their identity became connected to being needed, accepted, or approved of. People-pleasing often looks loving on the surface, but underneath it is frequently driven by fear. Fear says, "If I say no, they may leave." Fear says, "If I disappoint people, I will lose connection." Fear says, "My needs are less important than everyone else's." As a result, many people spend years emotionally overextending themselves while silently neglecting their own well-being. The problem with constantly ignoring your own needs is that resentment eventually grows. You cannot continuously pour into others while abandoning yourself without emotional consequences. Many people become emotionally exhausted because they are trying to earn love through self-sacrifice instead of allowing love to exist through mutual respect and balance. Saying no becomes difficult when self-worth is tied to approval. Some people feel physically uncomfortable setting boundaries because their nervous system associates conflict with emotional danger. They fear being called selfish, difficult, unkind, or uncaring. But protecting your emotional health does not make you selfish. It makes you emotionally responsible. Every healthy relationship requires boundaries, because boundaries create clarity. Without boundaries, people begin operating from assumptions, entitlement, emotional dependency, or emotional control. Boundaries communicate where your emotional responsibilities begin and end. For example, healthy boundaries allow you to support someone without becoming responsible for fixing their entire life. They allow you to love deeply without tolerating disrespect. They allow you to care for others without neglecting yourself. Boundaries protect you from emotional burnout because they remind you that your peace matters too. One of the biggest misconceptions about boundaries is confusing boundaries with control. Healthy boundaries are about managing your own behavior and emotional space. Control is about trying to force others to behave according to your demands. There is a significant difference between the two. A boundary says, "I will not remain in conversations where I am being disrespected." Control says, "You are not allowed to disagree with me." A boundary says, "I need honesty and consistency in my relationships." Control says, "I need to monitor everything you do because I do not trust you." Healthy boundaries focus on self-protection and emotional well-being. Control focuses on power, fear, and manipulation. This distinction is important because many people who have experienced emotional pain become controlling out of fear. Fear of betrayal, abandonment, or rejection may cause people to try controlling relationships instead of building trust. But control never creates healthy intimacy. It creates emotional pressure and disconnection. Healthy boundaries actually strengthen relationships because they create emotional safety, honesty, and respect. When people communicate boundaries clearly, there is less confusion, resentment, and emotional chaos. Boundaries encourage authentic relationships because both individuals can show up honestly, instead of pretending to be comfortable with situations that violate their emotional needs. Protecting your emotional energy is another essential part of boundaries. Not every person deserves unlimited access to your emotions, time, attention, or vulnerability. Many people become emotionally depleted because they allow toxic behaviors, emotional drama, manipulation, or constant negativity to consume their lives. Emotional energy is valuable, and protecting it is an act of self-respect. Some relationships drain people because they are built entirely around emotional imbalance. One person constantly gives while the other constantly takes. One person continuously supports while the other continuously creates emotional chaos. Over time, emotional exhaustion replaces connection because there is no healthy reciprocity. Protecting your emotional energy requires self-awareness. You must become honest about which relationships bring peace, and which relationships consistently create emotional instability. Not everyone who enters your life deserves permanent access to your emotional space. Some people are meant to teach lessons, not remain forever. Learning to protect your energy also means recognizing emotional manipulation. Manipulation often appears through guilt, emotional pressure, silent treatment, blame shifting, or making someone feel responsible for another person's emotions. People with weak boundaries are especially vulnerable to manipulation because they already struggle with guilt and fear of disappointing others. A healthy relationship allows both people to have emotional independence while still maintaining connection. Emotional independence means your identity, peace, and self-worth do not disappear inside the relationship. You remain connected to yourself while also connected to another person. This balance creates healthier love because the relationship becomes rooted in choice rather than emotional dependency. Boundaries also require consistency. Many people communicate boundaries verbally, but fail to reinforce them through action. For example, someone may repeatedly say they deserve respect while continuing to tolerate disrespectful behavior without consequences. Boundaries are not just words. They are standards supported by action. This is why self-respect and boundaries are inseparable. Self-respect is not simply believing you deserve better. It is behaving like you deserve better. It is having the courage to walk away from situations that continuously damage your emotional well-being. It is refusing to shrink yourself to maintain unhealthy relationships. It is understanding that protecting your peace is more important than maintaining every connection. Building standards rooted in self-love changes relationships completely. Standards are not unrealistic expectations designed to create perfection. Healthy standards are simply the minimum emotional conditions necessary for a healthy relationship. They reflect what you value, what you will accept, and what you will no longer tolerate. When standards are rooted in insecurity, people often seek relationships based on validation, status, attention, or fear of loneliness. But when standards are rooted in self-love, priorities shift. Emotional maturity becomes more attractive than inconsistency. Peace becomes more valuable than emotional chaos. Honesty becomes more important than temporary excitement. Self-love raises your standards naturally because you stop settling for relationships that constantly damage your emotional health. You stop romanticizing potential while ignoring reality. You stop convincing yourself to tolerate behavior that violates your emotional needs. Instead, you begin choosing relationships that align with your values, emotional well-being, and growth. This transformation does not happen overnight. Learning boundaries can feel uncomfortable, especially if you are used to prioritizing others over yourself. Some people may react negatively when you begin setting healthier limits because they benefited from your lack of boundaries before. But discomfort is often part of growth. Every time you honor your boundaries, you strengthen your self-respect. Every time you say no to something that harms your peace, you teach yourself that your well-being matters. Every time you choose honesty over people-pleasing, you build emotional confidence. One of the most powerful things you can learn is that not everyone will understand your boundaries, and that is okay. Your job is not to make everyone comfortable. Your job is to protect your emotional health while remaining authentic and respectful. Healthy people will respect your boundaries, even if they do not always fully understand them. Unhealthy people often become angry when they lose access to the version of you that constantly abandoned yourself for their comfort. Boundaries also teach you the difference between healthy love and emotional control. Healthy love respects individuality, emotional needs, and personal growth. It allows space for honesty, rest, emotional expression, and independence. It does not demand self-erasure as proof of commitment. As your self-respect grows, your relationships begin to change. You become less attracted to emotional chaos and more attracted to consistency. You stop chasing people who repeatedly disrespect your needs. You stop feeling guilty for protecting your peace. You become more intentional about who receives access to your emotional world. Most importantly, you begin understanding that love should never cost you your identity. Relationships should support your growth, not destroy your emotional well-being. The healthiest love exists when two people can care deeply for each other while still honoring themselves. You teach people how to treat you by what you consistently tolerate, accept, and reinforce. When you value yourself, your standards rise. When your standards rise, your relationships improve. And when your relationships improve, love becomes less about emotional survival and more about peace, respect, balance, and genuine connection. The moment you stop abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable is the moment your healing truly begins. Your boundaries are not barriers to love. They are proof that you finally understand your worth. Chapter 7. Conflict, Control, and Emotional Power. What arguments reveal about identity? Conflict is an unavoidable part of every relationship. No matter how deeply two people love each other, disagreements, misunderstandings, emotional reactions, and moments of tension will eventually arise. Yet conflict itself is not what destroys relationships. The real danger lies in how people handle conflict when emotions become intense. Arguments have the power to either deepen emotional understanding or create emotional damage that slowly weakens connection over time. Many people fear conflict because they associate it with rejection, abandonment, disrespect, or emotional pain. Others become consumed by conflict because arguments awaken a deep need for control, validation, or emotional dominance. But beneath every conflict lies something much deeper than the disagreement itself. Conflict reveals identity. It exposes emotional maturity, insecurities, fears, ego, unresolved wounds, communication habits, and the way individuals view themselves and others. Arguments are emotional mirrors. They reveal who people become when they feel challenged, misunderstood, criticized, or emotionally unsafe. Some people become defensive. Some become emotionally unavailable. Some become aggressive. Others become desperate to restore peace at any cost. The way a person handles conflict often says more about their emotional health than the way they behave during calm moments. This is why relationships can feel so emotionally intense during conflict. Conflict threatens emotional connection, and emotional connection is deeply tied to human needs for safety, belonging, and acceptance. When relationships feel unstable, many people unconsciously enter emotional survival mode. Instead of focusing on understanding, they focus on protecting themselves emotionally. This emotional survival instinct is one of the main reasons power struggles happen in relationships. A power struggle occurs when the focus shifts from connection to control. Instead of two people working together to solve a problem, both individuals begin fighting for emotional dominance, validation, or the need to feel superior. The relationship stops feeling like a partnership and starts feeling like a battlefield. Power struggles are rarely about the surface issue alone. A disagreement about communication, time, finances, or affection often carries deeper emotional meaning underneath. One person may feel unheard. Another may feel controlled. One may fear losing independence, while the other fears emotional abandonment. Without emotional awareness, these deeper fears become hidden beneath anger, criticism, defensiveness, or emotional withdrawal. At the center of many power struggles lies the ego. Ego is the part of ourselves that constantly seeks protection, validation, and control. It fears vulnerability because vulnerability feels emotionally risky. The ego wants to avoid being wrong, weak, rejected, embarrassed, or emotionally exposed. This is why many arguments become less about solving problems and more about protecting pride. Pride can quietly destroy emotional intimacy because it prevents honesty, accountability, and vulnerability. Some people would rather protect their ego than protect the relationship. They refuse to apologize, avoid taking responsibility, dismiss their partner's feelings, or turn every disagreement into a competition. Deep down, they fear that admitting fault makes them weak or unworthy. But emotional maturity understands something powerful. Being wrong does not diminish your value. Taking accountability does not make you weak. In fact, the ability to acknowledge mistakes, listen openly, and prioritize understanding over pride is one of the strongest signs of emotional strength. Emotionally immature individuals often struggle during conflict because they react from emotion rather than awareness. Emotional immaturity is not about age. It is about the inability to manage emotions responsibly. Emotionally immature people may lash out during disagreements, blame others for everything, avoid difficult conversations, manipulate situations to avoid accountability, or shut down emotionally instead of communicating honestly. Some people learn these patterns growing up in emotionally unhealthy environments. If someone witnessed constant yelling, criticism, emotional neglect, manipulation, or unstable conflict during childhood, they may unconsciously repeat those behaviors in adult relationships. Conflict becomes less about solving problems and more about reenacting emotional patterns they learned earlier in life. One of the most damaging dynamics in relationships is the constant need to be right. Many people enter arguments with one goal: to win. They listen only to respond, defend, or prove their point. The conversation becomes about preserving the ego instead of preserving emotional connection. But relationships are not competitions. There are no real winners when emotional safety is destroyed. The need to always be right often comes from insecurity rather than confidence. Deep down, some people believe admitting fault threatens their identity or worth. Others fear losing emotional control if they allow vulnerability into the conversation. Unfortunately, this creates relationships where both individuals feel emotionally unseen because understanding is constantly replaced by defensiveness. Healthy relationships require a shift from "how do I win this argument" to "how do we understand each other better?" This shift changes everything. It transforms conflict from emotional warfare into emotional growth. It allows both people to feel heard instead of attacked. Connection grows when individuals stop viewing each other as enemies during difficult moments. Conflict should not become a battle for superiority. It should become an opportunity to understand unmet needs, emotional triggers, and deeper emotions beneath the surface. Unfortunately, not all conflict is healthy. Some relationships involve toxic dynamics rooted in manipulation, emotional control, or psychological harm. Identifying manipulation is essential because manipulation slowly damages emotional well-being and self-trust. Manipulation often appears subtly at first. It may involve guilt-tripping, gaslighting, blame-shifting, silent treatment, emotional withdrawal, or making someone feel responsible for another person's emotions. Manipulative individuals often avoid accountability by twisting situations, denying reality, or making the other person question their own emotions and perceptions. Gaslighting is especially harmful because it causes people to doubt their reality. A manipulative person may minimize feelings, deny events that happened, or convince someone they are too sensitive whenever concerns are expressed. Over time, this damages emotional confidence and creates confusion within the relationship. Control can also disguise itself as love. Some individuals attempt to control who their partner talks to, how they behave, what they wear, or how they spend time. They may justify controlling behavior as protection, concern, or commitment, but healthy love does not require emotional imprisonment. Control grows from fear, insecurity, and emotional instability, not genuine trust. Toxic conflict patterns often leave people feeling emotionally drained, anxious, silenced, or constantly on edge. Healthy conflict may feel uncomfortable temporarily, but toxic conflict damages emotional safety consistently. This distinction is important because many people normalize unhealthy dynamics simply because chaos feels familiar. One of the most powerful skills in healthy relationships is emotional regulation. Emotional regulation is the ability to manage emotional reactions without becoming controlled by them. It does not mean suppressing feelings or pretending not to care. It means remaining emotionally aware and intentional even during difficult moments. When emotions become intense, the nervous system often reacts automatically. Heart rate increases, thoughts race, defensiveness rises, and communication becomes impulsive. This is why people say things they regret during arguments. Emotional regulation creates space between the feeling and the reaction. Learning emotional regulation begins with self-awareness. You must recognize when you are emotionally activated before the conversation becomes destructive. Some people need to pause and breathe before responding. Others need temporary space to calm their nervous system before continuing the conversation. Healthy regulation is not emotional avoidance. It is emotional responsibility. Emotionally regulated individuals can express anger without becoming cruel. They can communicate disappointment without attacking identity. They can disagree without destroying emotional safety. This creates healthier conflict because both individuals feel safer expressing themselves honestly. Another important part of emotional regulation is learning how to self-soothe instead of expecting relationships to instantly remove emotional discomfort. Many people panic during conflict because they fear emotional disconnection. This fear causes impulsive reactions such as begging, shutting down, attacking, or demanding immediate reassurance. But healthy relationships require the ability to tolerate temporary discomfort without emotionally collapsing. Conflict also becomes healthier when people learn to separate intention from impact. Sometimes individuals unintentionally hurt each other without malicious intent. Healthy communication allows space for accountability without immediate assumptions of emotional attack. This creates compassion and emotional flexibility inside relationships. Turning conflict into growth opportunities requires emotional maturity from both individuals. Growth begins when people stop viewing conflict as proof the relationship is failing and start viewing it as an opportunity to understand each other more deeply. Healthy conflict can reveal unmet needs, emotional wounds, fears, communication problems, and areas where healing is needed. Conflict can strengthen relationships when both people approach disagreements with respect, honesty, and emotional responsibility. Difficult conversations can create deeper intimacy when vulnerability replaces defensiveness. Apologies can rebuild trust when accountability becomes genuine. Emotional honesty can deepen connection when people feel safe enough to express their true feelings. This does not mean every relationship should survive conflict. Some conflicts reveal incompatibility, emotional abuse, or unhealthy dynamics that cannot be ignored. Emotional awareness helps distinguish between relationships that require healing and relationships that require distance. The goal is not to eliminate conflict entirely, because conflict is part of human connection. The goal is to handle conflict in ways that protect emotional safety, encourage growth, and strengthen understanding. Healthy relationships are not built by people who never disagree. They are built by people who learn how to disagree without emotionally destroying each other. As emotional maturity grows, arguments begin to look different. Conversations become less reactive and more intentional. People listen more openly. Accountability becomes easier. Emotional safety increases. The focus shifts from winning arguments to strengthening connection. Most importantly, conflict begins revealing opportunities for healing rather than only pain. Every disagreement becomes a chance to understand yourself more deeply. Every emotional trigger becomes an opportunity for awareness. Every challenge becomes a chance to practice emotional maturity instead of emotional survival. Conflict exposes identity because difficult moments reveal what people are truly carrying inside. But conflict can also become the place where transformation begins. It can become the place where pride softens, emotional walls come down, healing begins, and healthier love becomes possible. The strongest relationships are not the ones without conflict. They are the ones where both people are willing to grow through conflict, without losing respect, compassion, and emotional responsibility along the way. When love becomes more important than ego, relationships stop becoming power struggles and start becoming partnerships built on understanding, healing, emotional safety, and growth. Chapter 8. Healing Through Relationships: How Love Can Transform You. Relationships have the power to wound us deeply, but they also have the power to heal us in ways we never imagined possible. Many people think healing only happens in isolation, through distance, solitude, or personal reflection. While self-work is incredibly important, healing can also happen through healthy emotional connection. In fact, some wounds cannot fully heal until they are brought into relationships where new emotional experiences become possible. Love has the ability to transform people, because relationships often become the environment where emotional patterns are challenged, fears are confronted, and healing begins. A healthy relationship does not erase your past pain overnight, but it can create emotional safety strong enough for healing to grow. It can show you that love does not always have to involve chaos, manipulation, fear, or emotional survival. It can teach you that intimacy does not have to destroy your peace. Many people carry hidden beliefs about love based on painful experiences. Some believe love always leads to abandonment. Others believe vulnerability is dangerous. Some believe they must constantly earn affection to avoid rejection. These beliefs are often formed through heartbreak, childhood wounds, betrayal, or emotionally unhealthy relationships. Over time, people begin expecting pain because pain has become emotionally familiar. But healing relationships challenge those beliefs. They introduce new emotional experiences that slowly reshape the nervous system. A person who once expected abandonment experiences consistency instead. Someone who feared emotional vulnerability experiences acceptance instead of judgment. A person who once believed their needs did not matter begins experiencing emotional support and understanding. This is one of the most beautiful aspects of healthy love. It allows people to experience themselves differently. Relationships can become mirrors not only for wounds, but also for healing. Through healthy connection, people begin seeing parts of themselves that pain once convinced them did not exist. They begin recognizing their worth, emotional strength, and capacity to receive genuine love. Relationships become catalysts for healing because emotional closeness naturally activates unresolved emotions. Healthy relationships do not avoid emotional wounds. They create opportunities to face them safely. This does not mean healing relationships are perfect or free from conflict. It means both individuals are willing to approach challenges with emotional responsibility, honesty, compassion, and growth. Healing relationships require emotional safety. Emotional safety is the foundation of emotional intimacy. It is the feeling that you can express yourself honestly, without fear of constant rejection, humiliation, manipulation, or emotional punishment. When emotional safety exists, vulnerability becomes easier because the nervous system no longer feels constantly threatened. Many people have never experienced true emotional safety in relationships. They may have spent years walking on eggshells, suppressing emotions, fearing abandonment, or constantly preparing for emotional instability. As a result, healthy love can initially feel unfamiliar or even uncomfortable. The nervous system may struggle to trust consistency because chaos once felt normal. This is why healing often requires learning how to receive healthy love. Receiving love sounds simple, but for many people it is deeply challenging. Some people are more comfortable giving than receiving because giving feels safer. Others become suspicious when someone treats them well because they are waiting for disappointment or betrayal. Some push healthy people away because emotional closeness triggers fear rather than comfort. People who grew up emotionally neglected or repeatedly hurt may unconsciously resist healthy love because it challenges the identity they formed around pain. If someone believes they are unworthy deep down, healthy love can feel emotionally unfamiliar. They may question it, sabotage it, or struggle to trust it fully. Healing requires becoming aware of these reactions, instead of allowing them to control relationships unconsciously. You must ask yourself whether you are rejecting healthy love because it feels unsafe to your wounded self, not because it is actually unhealthy. Growth often requires tolerating the discomfort of emotional safety long enough for your nervous system to recognize that love does not always lead to pain. A healthy partner cannot heal you entirely, but they can support your healing journey by creating consistency, emotional honesty, accountability, and compassion. Accountability is essential because healing relationships are not built on perfection. They are built on responsibility. Emotionally mature individuals understand that their actions affect others emotionally. They are willing to apologize, reflect, communicate honestly, and make changes when necessary. Accountability creates trust because it demonstrates emotional care and responsibility. Without accountability, relationships become emotionally unsafe because unresolved hurt continues repeating without growth. Many people confuse love with unconditional tolerance. But healthy love does not ignore harmful behavior. Emotional safety requires accountability because trust cannot grow where responsibility is constantly avoided. Healing relationships involve two people willing to recognize their patterns and actively work toward healthier connection. Healing also requires rewriting unhealthy relationship patterns. Most people unconsciously repeat emotional habits learned earlier in life until awareness interrupts the cycle. Someone who constantly chased emotionally unavailable partners may need to learn how to choose consistency instead of emotional intensity. Someone who feared vulnerability may need to practice emotional openness gradually. Someone who lost themselves in relationships may need to develop boundaries and self-respect. Rewriting patterns is not easy, because unhealthy patterns often feel emotionally automatic. The nervous system naturally returns to what is familiar, even when familiarity is painful. This is why healing requires intentionality. You must consciously choose healthier behaviors, even when old habits feel easier. This process can feel uncomfortable because growth often challenges emotional conditioning. A person accustomed to chaos may initially feel restless in peaceful relationships. Someone used to emotional inconsistency may mistake stability for boredom. But emotional peace is not lack of love. Often, it is the first sign of healthy love. One of the most important parts of healing through relationships is learning forgiveness properly. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. Many people believe forgiveness means excusing harmful behavior, ignoring pain, or allowing continued mistreatment. But true forgiveness is not self-betrayal. Forgiveness is about releasing the emotional grip pain has over your life. It is choosing not to carry bitterness, resentment, or hatred as permanent emotional burdens. Forgiveness allows healing because it frees you emotionally from being trapped in past wounds. However, forgiveness does not mean abandoning boundaries, tolerating abuse, or reconnecting with people who continuously harm your well-being. You can forgive someone while still choosing distance. You can release resentment while still protecting yourself. Healthy forgiveness includes wisdom. It recognizes the difference between compassion and self-abandonment. Many people stay trapped emotionally because they believe healing requires pretending they were never hurt. But healing begins when you honestly acknowledge your pain, while refusing to let that pain define your future permanently. Forgiveness is not denial. It is emotional liberation. Healing relationships also require self-forgiveness. Many individuals carry shame about past mistakes, unhealthy relationship choices, emotional reactions, or years spent tolerating pain. They criticize themselves for not leaving sooner, trusting the wrong people, or ignoring red flags. But growth requires compassion toward yourself too. You cannot heal while constantly attacking yourself internally. Your past mistakes do not make you unworthy of healthy love. They make you human. Every painful relationship carries lessons capable of creating wisdom, strength, and deeper self-awareness if you allow yourself to grow from the experience, instead of remaining trapped in shame. Growth through conscious partnership is one of the most transformative experiences possible. Conscious relationships are built intentionally. They are not driven only by attraction or emotional impulse. They are rooted in self-awareness, communication, accountability, emotional safety, and mutual growth. In conscious partnerships, both individuals recognize that relationships are opportunities for healing and evolution. Instead of blaming each other constantly, they become willing to reflect on their own patterns and emotional reactions. They approach conflict as a chance to understand each other more deeply, rather than simply proving who is right. Conscious love requires emotional courage because it demands honesty, vulnerability, accountability, and growth. It asks people to stop running from themselves emotionally. It asks them to confront insecurities, fears, and unhealthy habits, instead of projecting everything onto their partner. This does not mean conscious relationships are always easy. In fact, growth-oriented relationships can feel emotionally challenging because they expose areas that still need healing. But the difference is that the relationship becomes a safe space for growth, rather than a cycle of emotional destruction. When both people are committed to healing, relationships become incredibly transformative. Old fears begin softening. Emotional walls begin coming down. Communication becomes more honest. Trust becomes stronger. The relationship slowly shifts from emotional survival to emotional partnership. One of the most powerful things healthy love teaches is that you do not have to lose yourself to experience connection. Many people enter relationships believing sacrifice and suffering are necessary for love. But healthy relationships show that love can coexist with peace, boundaries, individuality, and emotional safety. Healing through relationships also teaches patience. Emotional wounds formed over years do not disappear instantly. There may still be triggers, fears, and moments of insecurity along the way. But healing relationships create room for growth instead of punishment. They allow space for honesty without shame. As healing deepens, people begin recognizing how much they have changed. The person who once begged for inconsistent love begins choosing emotional stability. The person who once feared abandonment begins developing inner security. The person who once tolerated disrespect begins honoring their own worth. This transformation is one of the greatest gifts relationships can offer when approached consciously. Love becomes more than romance. It becomes a place where healing, self-discovery, and emotional growth unfold together. The truth is, healthy love does not save you from yourself. It helps you become more fully yourself. It encourages healing instead of hiding. It strengthens emotional awareness instead of emotional avoidance. It teaches you that vulnerability can exist alongside safety, that connection can exist without losing your identity, and that love can support your growth instead of repeating your pain. You are not doomed to repeat unhealthy relationship patterns forever. Healing is possible. Emotional security is possible. Healthy love is possible. Every conscious relationship becomes an opportunity to rewrite the story pain once tried to write for you. And when healing and love begin working together, instead of against each other, relationships stop becoming places where wounds are constantly reopened and become places where hearts slowly learn how to heal, trust, grow, and love again. Chapter 9. letting go and learning the lesson when relationships end. There are few emotional experiences more painful than the ending of a relationship. When love ends, it can feel as though an entire part of your world collapses overnight. The routines change. The conversations disappear. The emotional connection that once brought comfort suddenly becomes silence. A person who once felt deeply woven into your life becomes distant or absent, and the emptiness that follows can feel overwhelming. Relationship endings hurt so deeply because love is never just about another person. Relationships become connected to identity, emotional safety, future dreams, routines, attachment, and self-perception. When a relationship ends, people are not only grieving the loss of someone they loved, they are grieving the version of themselves they became inside that relationship. They are grieving plans that may never happen, emotional habits that once brought comfort, and the sense of certainty they believed the relationship provided. This is why heartbreak can feel like identity loss. Many people build parts of their identity around their relationships without fully realizing it. They begin defining themselves through connection, partnership, validation, or emotional attachment. Over time, the relationship becomes emotionally intertwined with their sense of self. When the relationship ends, it can feel like losing direction, stability, and even purpose. Some people ask themselves painful questions after heartbreak. Who am I without this person? Why wasn't I enough? Will I ever feel whole again? These questions are common because endings often force people to confront emotional fears that were hidden beneath the relationship itself. The pain of heartbreak is not weakness. It is proof that you loved deeply, hoped sincerely, and emotionally invested yourself in another human being. Grief is a natural response to emotional loss. Yet many people try to rush their healing because society often teaches people to suppress pain instead of processing it honestly. They distract themselves immediately, pretend not to care, jump into new relationships, or emotionally numb themselves to avoid facing grief directly. But unprocessed pain does not disappear. It simply hides beneath the surface until it resurfaces later through emotional triggers, anxiety, resentment, emotional numbness, or repeated unhealthy relationship patterns. Healing begins when you stop running from heartbreak and start allowing yourself to process it honestly. Grieving a relationship in a healthy way requires emotional honesty. You must allow yourself to feel sadness without judging yourself for it. Many people criticize themselves for hurting too much, staying too long, or loving too deeply. But healing does not come through self-condemnation. It comes through compassion and acceptance. Grief is not linear. Some days you may feel strong and hopeful. Other days, memories may suddenly reopen emotional pain you thought was fading. This does not mean you are failing at healing. Emotional recovery happens gradually. Hearts do not heal on strict timelines. One of the most difficult parts of relationship endings is accepting that closure does not always arrive the way we hope. Some people never receive the apology they deserve. Some relationships end without full understanding. Some people leave without giving emotional clarity. Waiting endlessly for another person to explain, validate, or heal your pain can keep you emotionally trapped. True closure often begins internally. It begins when you accept reality instead of resisting it. It begins when you stop waiting for the relationship to become what it no longer is. Acceptance does not mean pretending the pain never existed. It means recognizing that healing cannot fully begin while you are emotionally fighting reality. One of the most powerful shifts after heartbreak happens when you stop viewing the relationship only as a loss and begin recognizing it as a lesson. This does not mean minimizing your pain or pretending everything happened for a simple reason. It means understanding that every relationship reveals something valuable about yourself, your needs, your patterns, your boundaries, your fears, and your emotional growth. Some relationships teach you how deeply you can love. Others teach you where you still need healing. Some teach you the importance of self-respect. Others reveal the dangers of abandoning yourself to keep someone else. Even painful relationships can create wisdom, if you are willing to reflect honestly, instead of remaining trapped in bitterness. Many people see failed relationships as proof that they are unlovable or broken. But relationships ending do not automatically mean the relationship had no value. Sometimes people are simply incompatible. Sometimes emotional maturity levels differ. Sometimes people enter relationships carrying wounds they have not yet healed. And sometimes relationships end because they were only meant to teach certain lessons, not last forever. Recognizing lessons instead of failures changes the healing process completely. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" you begin asking, "What did this experience reveal about me?" This question transforms pain into awareness. Perhaps the relationship revealed a fear of abandonment that needs healing. Perhaps it exposed weak boundaries or emotional dependency. Perhaps it taught you that chemistry, without emotional safety, is not enough. Perhaps it showed you how much you were sacrificing your own needs for connection. Every relationship leaves emotional evidence about what needs attention within us. This awareness becomes the foundation for growth. One of the hardest but most necessary parts of healing is releasing attachment. Attachment is not always love. Sometimes attachment is emotional dependency, fear of loneliness, addiction to familiarity, or hope that things could still become different. Many people remain emotionally stuck, not because the relationship was healthy, but because they became emotionally attached to the idea of what they wanted the relationship to become. Letting go requires accepting that holding on to emotional pain will not recreate the relationship you lost. It requires recognizing when attachment is preventing healing instead of protecting love. This process can feel incredibly painful because attachment often becomes tied to emotional identity and comfort. The mind naturally romanticizes what is gone. After heartbreak, people often focus only on the beautiful memories while minimizing the emotional pain, incompatibility, or unhealthy dynamics that existed. This selective memory can create emotional confusion and make letting go more difficult. Healing requires honesty. It requires seeing the relationship clearly, instead of idealizing it through loneliness or emotional longing. Some relationships were beautiful, but still unhealthy for your growth. Some relationships contained genuine love, but lacked emotional stability, compatibility, or readiness. Accepting these truths helps free you emotionally. Releasing resentment is equally important. Resentment keeps people emotionally connected to pain long after relationships end. Anger can temporarily feel protective because it creates emotional distance from vulnerability and grief. But carrying bitterness for years eventually poisons your emotional well-being more than the person who hurt you. Forgiveness after heartbreak is not about excusing harmful behavior or pretending pain did not matter. Forgiveness is about refusing to allow pain to permanently harden your heart. It is choosing emotional freedom over emotional imprisonment. You forgive because you deserve peace, not because the other person necessarily earned it. Sometimes forgiveness also involves forgiving yourself. Many people carry deep shame after relationships end. They blame themselves for ignoring red flags, staying too long, tolerating disrespect, or making emotional mistakes. But growth requires compassion toward the version of yourself who was simply trying to love, connect, and feel valued. You cannot heal while constantly attacking yourself for your humanity. Your mistakes do not make you unworthy of love. Your heartbreak does not mean you failed. Relationships are part of the human experience, and every person enters love carrying imperfections, fears, and lessons still unfolding. Rebuilding yourself after heartbreak is one of the most powerful forms of transformation. At first, heartbreak can make you feel emotionally shattered. But over time, healing creates strength you did not realize you possessed. You begin reconnecting with yourself outside of the relationship. You rediscover parts of your identity that may have been neglected. You begin rebuilding emotional confidence, independence, self-worth, and clarity. Healing often requires learning how to be alone without feeling empty. Many people fear solitude because they associate being alone with rejection or inadequacy. But solitude can become sacred when used for healing and self-discovery. Being alone gives you space to reflect, grow, and reconnect with your own emotional needs without constantly seeking external validation. As healing deepens, priorities begin changing. You stop romanticizing emotional chaos. You stop chasing unavailable people. You stop ignoring your intuition for temporary connection. Instead, you begin valuing peace, consistency, honesty, emotional maturity, and self-respect. Pain has a way of transforming people when they allow themselves to grow through it, instead of becoming consumed by it. Heartbreak often strips away illusions and forces emotional truth into the light. It teaches you what you truly need. It teaches you where you abandoned yourself. It teaches you how strong you actually are. Some of the most emotionally wise people are not those who avoided heartbreak. They are those who allowed heartbreak to deepen their self-awareness instead of destroying their capacity to love. Pain can either harden you or heal you depending on how you process it. Transformation begins when you stop asking heartbreak to return you to who you were before the pain. Sometimes pain changes you because you are becoming someone stronger, wiser, and more emotionally conscious than before. Healing is not about becoming emotionally numb or pretending not to care anymore. It is about learning how to love without losing yourself in the process. One day, you will look back and realize the relationship that once broke, you also revealed the parts of yourself that needed healing most. You will realize that endings, while painful, created space for growth that comfort never could. You will recognize that losing someone did not mean losing yourself permanently. In fact, sometimes relationships end because life is trying to return you to yourself. The end of a relationship is not the end of your story. It is not proof that you are unworthy, unlovable, or destined to remain broken. It is simply a chapter. And chapters end so new ones can begin. You are allowed to grieve. You are allowed to hurt. But you are also allowed to heal, rebuild, grow, and love again from a healthier place than before. Heartbreak may leave scars, but those scars can become reminders of your resilience instead of your destruction. They can remind you that you survived emotional pain that once felt unbearable. They can remind you that healing is possible. Most importantly, they can remind you that your value never depended on who stayed or who left. Your worth remains intact even after goodbye. Chapter 10. Becoming the love you seek. The healthiest relationship starts within. At the heart of every relationship journey lies one final truth that changes everything. The healthiest love you will ever experience begins with the relationship you build with yourself. For years, many people search outside themselves for the love, peace, validation, security, and fulfillment they have not yet learned to create internally. They believe the right relationship will finally complete them, heal them, or make them feel whole. But lasting love does not begin with finding someone else. It begins with finding yourself. Relationships can bring joy, support, intimacy, and companionship, But no relationship can permanently replace the need for self-awareness, self-worth, emotional responsibility, and inner peace. The strongest relationships are not built between two emotionally incomplete people trying to save each other. They are built between two individuals who are committed to growth, healing, and emotional wholeness within themselves. This does not mean you must become perfect before experiencing love. Perfection is not the goal. Emotional awareness is. Healing is. Authenticity is. The journey of becoming the love you seek is about developing the emotional health necessary to create relationships rooted in peace rather than fear, connection rather than dependency, and self-respect rather than self-abandonment. One of the most powerful signs of emotional growth is emotional independence. Emotional independence does not mean you stop needing people or become emotionally distant. Human beings are naturally designed for connection. Emotional independence simply means your identity, worth, and emotional stability no longer depend entirely on another person's approval, attention, or presence. Emotionally independent people can love deeply without losing themselves. They can experience closeness without becoming emotionally consumed by fear of abandonment. They enjoy relationships while still maintaining connection to their own identity, goals, values, and emotional well-being. Love becomes an addition to their life, not the entire foundation of their existence. Many people struggle with emotional independence because they have spent years believing relationships define their value. They seek validation through romantic attention, emotional reassurance, or being chosen by others. When relationships end or become unstable, they feel emotionally lost because their sense of self was built around connection instead of internal security. But healing changes this. The more you reconnect with yourself, the more emotionally grounded you become. You begin realizing that your worth does not disappear because someone cannot recognize it. You stop defining your identity through rejection, abandonment, or relationship status. Instead, you begin building a life rooted in purpose, self-respect, emotional awareness, and peace. Inner peace is one of the greatest gifts emotional growth can provide. Inner peace is not the absence of challenges or emotional pain. It is the ability to remain connected to yourself, even during uncertainty. It is knowing that no matter what relationships change, you will not abandon yourself in the process. Many people spend years chasing relationships while neglecting their relationship with themselves. They pour energy into understanding others while avoiding understanding their own emotions, needs, fears, and dreams. But becoming emotionally healthy requires spending time reconnecting with your inner world honestly. This often means learning how to be alone without feeling empty. Solitude can feel uncomfortable at first because it removes distractions and forces emotional reflection. But solitude also creates space for healing, self-discovery, creativity, and growth. When you learn how to enjoy your own company, relationships stop becoming emotional escape routes and start becoming conscious choices. Creating a fulfilling life outside relationships is essential because healthy love should complement your life, not replace it. Too many people abandon their passions, friendships, goals, hobbies, and identity once they enter relationships. They make love their entire world and slowly disconnect from themselves. Over time, this creates emotional imbalance because their happiness becomes completely dependent on the relationship. A fulfilling life creates emotional stability because it reminds you that your existence has meaning beyond romantic connection. Your purpose, growth, dreams, friendships, spirituality, creativity, and personal goals matter too. Healthy relationships support these parts of you instead of requiring you to sacrifice them. When your life feels meaningful independently, you approach relationships differently. You stop choosing people out of loneliness or desperation. You stop tolerating unhealthy behavior simply because you fear being alone. You become more intentional about the energy you allow into your life because your peace already has value. Loving without losing yourself becomes possible when self-awareness and self-respect grow stronger. One of the greatest dangers in relationships is self-abandonment. Self-abandonment happens when people ignore their own needs, silence their feelings, betray their boundaries, or reshape themselves completely to maintain connection. They become so focused on keeping love that they slowly lose themselves within it. Healthy love never requires the destruction of your identity. Love should not force you to betray your values, suppress your emotions, or shrink yourself emotionally to maintain acceptance. Real connection allows both people to remain authentic while growing together. This requires emotional courage, because authenticity always carries vulnerability. Becoming emotionally available means allowing yourself to be seen honestly, instead of hiding behind emotional walls, avoidance, pride, or fear. Many people want deep love, while simultaneously protecting themselves from emotional exposure. They crave intimacy but fear vulnerability, because vulnerability feels risky. Emotional availability means becoming willing to engage fully with your emotions, instead of avoiding them. It means communicating honestly, expressing needs clearly, and allowing yourself to experience connection without constantly preparing for disaster. Emotionally available people are not fearless. They simply stop allowing fear to control their relationships entirely. This does not mean ignoring discernment or blindly trusting everyone. Healthy vulnerability exists alongside wisdom and boundaries. But emotional availability requires releasing the belief that protecting yourself emotionally at all times will guarantee safety. In reality, emotional walls may protect you from pain temporarily, but they also block intimacy, connection, and authentic love. Many emotionally unavailable people developed their emotional defenses through heartbreak, betrayal, rejection, or childhood wounds. Their walls were survival mechanisms designed to prevent further pain. But survival and connection are not the same thing. Eventually, healing requires learning how to open your heart again, without abandoning self-awareness and boundaries. The connection between self-awareness and lasting love is profound. Self-awareness allows you to recognize your emotional patterns, triggers, fears, communication habits, and relationship tendencies consciously. Without self-awareness, people often repeat unhealthy cycles automatically. They project wounds onto others, seek validation through relationships, avoid accountability, or recreate familiar emotional pain unconsciously. Self-awareness interrupts these patterns. It helps you recognize when fear is influencing your choices. It teaches you how to communicate needs honestly, instead of expecting others to read your mind. It helps you identify when old wounds are being triggered, instead of reacting impulsively. Most importantly, self-awareness allows you to take responsibility for your healing, instead of expecting relationships to fix everything for you. Lasting love requires emotional maturity from both individuals. It requires honesty, accountability, empathy, emotional regulation, and mutual growth. Relationships cannot thrive long-term when people remain disconnected from themselves emotionally. You cannot create healthy intimacy while avoiding self-awareness, because unconscious wounds eventually affect every relationship. As you grow emotionally, your understanding of love begins to change. You stop viewing love as emotional dependency or constant emotional intensity. Instead, you begin recognizing love as emotional safety, consistency, mutual respect, honesty, and growth. You stop chasing people who trigger chaos and start valuing people who bring peace. You also become more intentional about the energy you bring into relationships. Instead of asking only, "What can this person give me?" you begin asking, "Who am I becoming inside this relationship?" This question changes the entire experience of love, because relationships stop being solely about emotional fulfillment and become opportunities for conscious connection and growth. One of the most important reflections for continued growth is asking yourself whether your relationships align with the person you are becoming. Are your connections supporting your healing or reinforcing your wounds? Are you expressing your authentic self or performing for acceptance? Are you choosing relationships from self-worth or from fear of loneliness? Another important reflection is understanding your emotional triggers without judgment. Emotional triggers are not signs that you are broken. They are invitations to deeper awareness. Every trigger reveals an area where healing, compassion, or growth may still be needed. Instead of running from discomfort, begin asking what your emotions are trying to teach you about yourself. It is also important to reflect on the relationship you have with yourself daily. Do you speak to yourself with kindness or constant criticism? Do you honor your needs and boundaries? Do you trust yourself? Do you allow your value to depend entirely on external validation? Lasting love becomes healthier when your relationship with yourself becomes healthier too. Growth is not a destination where you suddenly become emotionally perfect forever. Healing is ongoing. Self-awareness deepens over time. Relationships continue teaching lessons throughout life. The goal is not perfection. The goal is conscious living, conscious loving, and conscious growth. As you continue your journey, remember that becoming the love you seek is not about becoming emotionally closed off or independent to the point of isolation. It is about becoming emotionally grounded enough that love enhances your life instead of controlling it. It is about learning how to love deeply while remaining connected to yourself. You deserve relationships that support your peace, growth, authenticity, and emotional well-being. But most importantly, you deserve to become someone who no longer abandons themselves in pursuit of love. The love you seek externally will always be limited until you begin creating it internally first. When you learn how to value yourself, protect your peace, communicate honestly, heal your wounds, and remain emotionally connected to yourself, relationships stop becoming desperate searches for completion and become beautiful expressions of wholeness. This is the final lesson of the relationship mirror. Love was never only meant to reveal who others are. Love was always meant to reveal who you are becoming. Conclusion. The mirror never lies. Love changes people. Sometimes it breaks them open. Sometimes it heals parts of them they never knew were wounded. Sometimes it exposes hidden fears, insecurities, and emotional patterns that have quietly shaped their lives for years. Relationships have the power to awaken our deepest emotions, because love is never just about another person. Love is also about the relationship we have with ourselves. This is the truth at the center of everything you have explored throughout this book. Relationships are mirrors. They reflect back the parts of ourselves we often struggle to see clearly on our own. They reveal our fears, our strengths, our emotional wounds, our habits, our boundaries, our communication patterns, and our level of self-worth. The relationship mirror never lies because every emotional reaction, every attachment, every conflict, and every heartbreak carries a deeper message about what is happening within us internally. Many people spend years searching for the perfect relationship, while avoiding the deeper work of understanding themselves. They focus only on finding the right person without realizing they are bringing unresolved wounds, fears, emotional habits, and unconscious patterns into every connection they create. This is why the same emotional cycles often repeat in different relationships. The faces change, but the lessons remain the same until awareness finally interrupts the pattern. Throughout this journey, you have seen how relationships expose emotional mirrors in powerful ways. You learned that attraction is often connected to emotional familiarity and unresolved wounds, rather than compatibility alone. You explored how attachment styles, childhood experiences, and hidden insecurities shape the way people connect, communicate, and seek love. You discovered how self-worth influences relationship choices, boundaries, emotional dependency, and the treatment people accept from others. You also learned that emotional triggers are not random. They are emotional signals, revealing wounds that still need healing. Conflict, communication, defensiveness, and emotional reactions all reveal deeper truths about fears, emotional conditioning, and unmet needs. Relationships become emotionally intense, not because people are weak, but because love touches the deepest parts of human vulnerability. Perhaps one of the most important lessons in this book is that healthy love begins internally. The relationship you build with yourself becomes the foundation for every relationship you experience. If you abandon yourself, ignore your boundaries, seek validation externally, or carry unresolved emotional wounds without awareness, those struggles will eventually appear within your relationships. But when you begin healing, valuing yourself, communicating honestly, and developing emotional awareness, your relationships begin changing too. Love was never meant to complete you. Love was meant to reveal you. This realization changes the way you view relationships completely. Instead of seeing love only as a destination, you begin seeing it as a teacher. Every relationship teaches something. Some relationships teach you how to trust. Others teach you how to set boundaries. Some teach you the importance of communication and emotional honesty. Others teach you what happens when you lose yourself trying to keep someone else. Even heartbreak carries lessons. Painful relationships often become the greatest opportunities for self-discovery because they force emotional truths into the light. Heartbreak exposes fears of abandonment, emotional dependency, weak boundaries, unresolved trauma, and hidden insecurities that may have remained unnoticed otherwise. While painful, these experiences can also become turning points that lead to healing, wisdom, and transformation. This does not mean pain should be romanticized, or that every difficult relationship should be endured. Some relationships are unhealthy and harmful. Some people are not emotionally safe. Awareness helps you recognize when relationships are supporting growth and when they are repeatedly damaging your emotional well-being. Self-awareness allows you to choose relationships consciously, instead of unconsciously repeating painful patterns. Self-awareness is one of the greatest forms of emotional freedom. Without it, people live on emotional autopilot. They repeat the same reactions, attract the same unhealthy dynamics, and continue seeking externally what they have not yet built internally. But awareness changes everything. Awareness helps you recognize your emotional triggers before they control you. It teaches you to respond instead of react. It allows you to understand your fears instead of projecting them onto others unconsciously. The more self-aware you become, the healthier your relationships can become. You begin recognizing when attraction is rooted in wounds instead of genuine alignment. You stop confusing emotional chaos with passion. You stop chasing validation through relationships because you begin understanding your value independent of external approval. You also begin embracing boundaries, emotional honesty, accountability, and emotional maturity. You learn that healthy love does not require self-abandonment. It does not demand constant emotional suffering or force you to sacrifice your identity for connection. Healthy love allows room for individuality, peace, honesty, vulnerability, and growth. Most importantly, you learn that emotional healing is possible. No matter what relationship pain you have experienced, your wounds do not define your future permanently. You are not doomed to repeat unhealthy patterns forever. Healing begins the moment you become willing to face yourself honestly, instead of running from emotional discomfort. Growth begins the moment you stop blaming yourself for being human, and start becoming curious about what your experiences are trying to teach you. This book was never about teaching perfection, because perfection does not exist in relationships. Human beings are imperfect, emotional, vulnerable, and constantly evolving. Relationships will always involve challenges, misunderstandings, and moments of discomfort, because growth itself can feel uncomfortable. The goal is not to become emotionally flawless. The goal is to become emotionally conscious. Conscious people approach relationships differently. They take responsibility for their healing, instead of expecting others to rescue them emotionally. They communicate with honesty, instead of manipulation. They set boundaries without shame. They remain connected to themselves, while also creating meaningful connection with others. They recognize that love should support growth, not destroy emotional well-being. Growth also requires compassion toward yourself. Many people carry shame about past relationships, mistakes, emotional reactions, or years spent tolerating unhealthy dynamics. But your past does not make you unworthy of healthy love. Your mistakes do not disqualify you from growth. Every experience, even painful ones, can become part of your transformation if you allow yourself to learn instead of remaining trapped in self-condemnation. As you continue moving forward in your life and relationships, remember that healing is not linear. There may still be moments where old fears resurface, emotional triggers appear, or insecurities arise. This does not mean you are failing. Emotional growth is an ongoing journey. What matters is your willingness to remain aware, intentional, and compassionate with yourself along the way. Do not chase perfection in love. Chase growth. Chase emotional honesty. Chase self-awareness. Chase peace. Healthy relationships are not built by perfect people. They are built by people willing to heal, communicate, grow, and love consciously, despite their imperfections. The truth is, every relationship you experience will continue reflecting something back to you. The question is whether you are willing to look honestly into the mirror. Are your relationships helping you grow, or keeping you emotionally stuck? Are you loving from wholeness or from fear? Are you communicating authentically, or hiding behind emotional defenses? Are you honoring your needs and boundaries, or abandoning yourself to maintain connection? These questions matter because the quality of your relationship with yourself shapes the quality of every relationship in your life. If you do not trust yourself, relationships may constantly feel unsafe. If you do not value yourself, you may continue accepting less than you deserve. If you do not heal your wounds, those wounds may continue influencing your attraction, communication, boundaries, and emotional choices unconsciously. But when you begin healing internally, everything changes. You become less attracted to emotional chaos, and more attracted to emotional peace. You stop seeking validation from unavailable people. You communicate more honestly. You establish healthier boundaries. You become emotionally available without losing yourself. And perhaps for the first time, love stops feeling like emotional survival and begins feeling like connection, safety, authenticity, and growth. The mirror never lies because relationships always reveal what is happening within us. But the mirror is not there to shame you. It is there to awaken you. Every experience of love is an invitation to know yourself more deeply. Every relationship is an opportunity to grow more conscious. Every heartbreak carries the possibility of transformation. And every moment of self-awareness brings you closer to the kind of love that no longer requires you to abandon yourself to receive it. As you close this book, carry this final reflection with you. What is love currently trying to teach you about yourself? The answer to that question may change your life forever. Thank you for reading this book. I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to leave us a review. TM Light. Disclaimer. This book was created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. While every effort was made to ensure the accuracy and relevance of the content, readers should note that this cannot be considered professional advice. Readers are encouraged to apply their own judgment and consult experts where needed.